I'll do 5 minutes in a really warm or hot bath with some Epsom salt or Ancient Minerals bath flakes, sometimes with CBD if I have it, sometimes without. My essential oils kit in my closet, I'll put things like combinations of peppermint and lavender. Or last night I did some tea tree oil in there and lemongrass too. So 5 minutes of just sitting in there in the hot bath. Then I'll sit up, and the shower is up here, and I put it on freezing cold water.
I just do a cold shower right after, but I'll stay in there. I'll read a book with my red light. You can get it on Amazon. I forget the brand, but it's a clip-on book illuminator light, reading light. And it's red light, so I'm not polluting my eyes with blue light. The light bulb above in my bathroom changes colors. I think they call it like chromatotherapy or something like that. Just like very low level colors rather than like a white hospital light, which I hate. So I'll sometimes read in there for 40 minutes. I'll just get lost in a book. By the time I get out, I'm so relaxed. I have to have a little bit of cold because I'm sweating. I'm usually sweating in there. I'm getting rid of some toxins, and then the cold water hits me, a little bit of norepinephrine boost, and then I'm ready for bed.
Thanks for tuning in to the Elevation Recovery Podcast, your hub for addiction recovery strategies, hosted by Chris Scott and Matt Finch.
Welcome to episode 206 of Elevation Recovery. This is Matt Finch. It's so good to be here with my co-host Chris Scott again. I think it's been a few weeks since you and I have done an episode together. You interviewed some folks. Maybe the last one was Katie Lane or someone after that. And from Embody, what's her company, Embody
Well,
Daily?
she works for Rhea Health. Yeah, and that was a lot of fun. I also did a episode for Rhea Health's YouTube channel. And Rhea Health helps people with accountability, medication-assisted treatment. But she, in her own right, has been open for years about how naltrexone has helped her, the Sinclair method, for alcohol addiction. And so, yeah, we had some good talks. Time's flying as usual. And so we'll have some more interesting guests lined up, but I think people probably do want to hear us reconnect. We're still good friends. We're still talking. But yeah, I'm trying to remind myself to sit up straight. I have this stool that I got, and because I used to sit in a chair that made me slump. I'm working on my posture, roll my shoulders back, kind of stack them on my spine a little bit. I had really good posture when I was a personal trainer, and ever since I stopped doing that and started doing more, well, not normal work, but working on my laptop, my postures suffered a little bit. But I've tried to get some sun. I did some sprints the other day on a deserted beach off of Savannah, which was nice. Trying to enjoy this super hot weather, and but yeah, it's great to be back with you as well.
That sounds great. Some sprints on the beach, on a secluded beach in Savannah. That's a good way to get some exercise. And I read recently this study on vitamin D deficiency and how people that have vitamin D deficiency, they did this in rat studies. Rats that had deficient vitamin D, they were way more likely to become addicted to opioids, and they were way more likely to get powerful effects from the opioids when their vitamin D was low. When they elevated the vitamin D in the rats, their opioid addiction rates went down, and the rates of the opioid effectiveness went down. So, like, imagine in a human, someone that's very deficient in vitamin D, if they take an opioid painkiller for pain, it's actually going to work a lot better at relieving the pain and at giving them the opioid euphoria if they're severely deficient in vitamin D. So this model, I mean, they're just coming out with this. I've been saying this for at least 6 or 7 years to my opioid clients. One of the biggest thing is, are you taking vitamin D or getting enough sunlight, and looking for the symptom clusters of vitamin D deficiency. So there it is, proof right there that the stuff that you and I have been talking about since pre the launch of this podcast, simple fucking nutrient deficiencies, vitamin D, magnesium, omega-3s, 3 key nutrients that most adult Americans are deficient in to at least some degree. and how not only can that, I did a video on this before, how those nutrient deficiencies can derail substance detox and recovery plans. Turns out, looking at these rat studies now, holy shit, not only that, but drugs can have way more euphoria effects, certain drugs and certain nutrient deficiencies, and you can be way more prone to addiction from something as small as being deficient in one nutrient. They were also saying how the rats that were deficient in vitamin D, it led to more tanning behavior. So they had tanning areas for the rats. And they were saying that there's the UV rays, the UVB rays, that form of UV rays increases endorphins. So it's like a lot of people, when I lived in upstate New York, I saw a lot of people addicted to these tanning salons in the winter. And this one girl looked like an Oompa Loompa, Chris. She was like orange. She took tanning to like a full extreme addiction. And, she was probably just trying to get vitamin D and endorphins to feel good. So while she was doing that, and a few other people in that same small town in upstate New York, I used opioids recreationally for 8 years without getting addicted in California. When I got to New York, it wasn't long before I became addicted to those. Why? There's hardly any sunlight all winter there, all fall, all spring. There's not much sunlight. It's way higher from the equator than San Diego. So even in the summer, as warm as it would get, the sun still wasn't as powerful. That, Chris, is when my opioid addiction began. 8 years of never getting addicted in California where there was sun all the time. I get there. I don't know about vitamin D deficiency. I'm not into supplements back then. Soon as it started to get like that, deficiency D goes down, then these opioids, all of a sudden I needed them. I became addicted. So this research, and I mean, you just have to wonder how many people out there are drinking alcohol. And the reason that they were able to drink responsibly for a long time, and then at some phase, all of a sudden they can't control their drinking anymore. I wonder how many times that was due to like a trauma or stress, and how many times that was due to someone simply being super omega-3 deficient or super magnesium deficient, and they can't relax. They start using alcohol, helps them relax, and then they need more and more alcohol to relax. Then the magnesium and other nutrients go down, meaning they're worse off, meaning they want alcohol more. This shit is like, it's not sexy the way a lot of people talk about it. Eat right, exercise, that's the way to. But I think that you and I and a lot of the people we've had on this podcast, we're all trying to kind of make these fundamentals a little sexier, a little more interesting, teaching people there's no one hack that you can do that makes everything easy. But there's several. It's like a campaign of these addiction recovery hacks, and starting with things like nutrient deficiencies. And, it's so simple, but so profound.
When you were talking about your experience in upstate New York, getting addicted to opioids a lot more quickly, or I guess maybe was that the first time you were addicted to opioids?
Yep.
Okay.
First time I became addicted.
Right. So, I mean, I had signs for sure for many years that I had an unhealthy relationship, to say the least, with alcohol. But the worst part of my addiction was when I was working basically sunrise to sunset and well beyond, getting very little sun. I was kind of holed up in my apartment. Even on days off, I would stay in my apartment often and close the curtains because the sun pissed me off. And alcohol was immensely pleasurable during that time in a way that it wasn't in the beginning of my addiction, where it was like an occasional nice thing, but I still was wary of the negative effects. And at the end of my addiction, it stopped doing much of anything. That's why I quit, because it stopped curing the withdrawal syndrome. I just reached a dead end. It became a totally exhausted resource for me, and I had to change. But during that period of getting very little sun, working too hard, I remember being pale. I was 30 pounds overweight. I was bloated. My hair was falling out, and obviously my hair was probably going to fall out. It's probably genetic.
Low testosterone all over the board.
Like clumps. My whole system was just deteriorating. It never even occurred to me that I probably needed more sun than I got. When I did go outside, I always wore sunglasses. interestingly, a lot of vitamin D, it gets created when your eyes are in contact with the sun. So you have photoreceptors in your skin. It's important to get that, but it's also important to get some sunlight reaching your eyes. Obviously, you don't want to stare at the sun. And if you're in like a high glare situation, like if you're out in the water or if you're skiing on ice, or if you're in traffic with shiny cars, you need to protect your eyes. But I wore sunglasses all the time. I didn't get my D levels tested back then, but I bet you if I did, they were very low. So I also thought when you were talking about that, about some research done by, I think, Rhonda Patrick, who's one of my favorite biochemical researchers, nutrition people, pretty famous. And she found that vitamin D is crucial in producing serotonin. So, it's not clear, because alcohol is such a complex drug, how much serotonin deficiency could have played in my addiction. However, there's a steroid hormone, which is what vitamin D3 is, that affects hundreds of different bodily processes. It's not hard to imagine that it's not just affecting serotonin. That's just what we know. And as you said, that's just one nutrient. And if one nutrient can have that much potential to affect behavior in rats and presumably in people as well, then what about the whole array of all nutrients that we evolved with that are essential, that we need to get from our diet or from sun exposure? My dog earlier, we've had some rain coming, which is badly needed. We've had really hot weather lately. But I think we had the eye of the storm earlier today. And my dog, Magnus, went outside and he does this thing, I guess it's common in pit bulls and pit bull mixes. They call it the alligator roll. And he got on his back and he started going like this, around. But I noticed he was totally blissed out. And at first I thought, oh, it must feel good because he's scratching his back with the grass. And then I realized that it could also be that the sun, which was out for, a minute or so, was just reaching his belly, which was probably the most exposed area for sun, because he's got a lot of fur on his back, but less on his belly. So I was like, maybe, I don't know what they're putting in the dog food. He gets the best quality kibble. I haven't yet made the leap to a raw diet, although that would be cool. Something I'm looking into. Probably need a bigger freezer. But I was thinking, what if he's vitamin D deficient and he does this to soak up as many sun rays as possible to increase his levels of vitamin D, which obviously dogs are not people, but we probably operate with a lot of the same nutrients. And after going out for sprints that day, I have an endorphin high. I feel naturally good. I feel the way that I wanted a bottle of wine, which I could drink in about 10 minutes back when I was addicted to alcohol. I feel the way I wanted that to feel. When I'm out in the sun for a few hours running sprints or going out in the water, it's like this buzz, this glowing, warm buzz that like seeps into my skin, and I get a little bit of like a head high. It's hard to explain, but I can feel like that for hours, and I always sleep better at night after getting that vitamin D. So I think the serotonin must be involved. I wouldn't be surprised if it's also affecting, as you say, the opioid system as well. And as we know, alcohol is a really complex drug that affects serotonin, dopamine, opioid system as well. And there's some evidence showing that the dopamine system is mediated through the opioid system first. So things cause pleasure, then you release your internal opiates or endorphins, and then that causes a cascade of dopamine as well to make sure that behavior is repeated. I could have gotten some feedback loop wrong in there, but I think that's generally how it works. So anything that affects your opioids can affect your dopamine as well. So then it could cause a faster habit formation for things that increase, that cause pleasure. I mean, it seems pretty elementary, almost tautological when you think about it. Things that feel good, you're going to repeat, but there are potentially multiple neurotransmitter systems involved there. And for me, when I was stuck inside drinking with no sun, that the only thing that seemed at all pleasurable was alcohol. I didn't take pleasure in food. I didn't take pleasure in seeing my friends that much, which is sad. I had great friends, and luckily now I take great pleasure in seeing them. But during that phase, everything was flat or bad except when I was drinking. I wonder if the sun had something to do with that.
Oh, you just talked about so much fun stuff. What do I want to unpack first? Well, regarding your dogs, Magnus in particular, and what he was doing, I had a red-nosed pit bull named Jaws when I was a drug dealer. I was such a dork back then. So the image that I had for myself was, tattoos, a sideways hat, like a surf shirt jersey, like it was like a sleeveless kind of jersey, Dickies shorts, flip flops, and then of course the matching red nosed pit bull to look hardcore and sell drugs. Meanwhile, I was a totally sensitive, over emotional, really, really loving, person. But I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be at least looked at like I was hardcore. So that was my mask. And that dog, Jaws, he was a full bred red nosed pit bull. He did the alligator roll, right? And he would do it so much. And his teeth at 4 months old, when I got him, I adopted him off of the boardwalk in the town that I used to live, Ocean Beach. Long giant pier that goes out, beautiful Pacific Ocean Beach, big grass area. We used to play hacky sack in a pretty short boardwalk. And there was some, I think, homeless. They looked like gypsy traveling, hippie type folks. And they had their female dog had puppies. And so this dog was one of those puppies. So I adopted him from them. They said, I can't afford to feed him. I was like, fell in love. And when I took him home, he did that alligator roll and his teeth were so sharp. And I'd put my fingers up and he'd start like snapping. I was like, look at those jaws. And that became his name. The interesting thing about Jaws is that he really, really loved the sunshine. Oftentimes during the specific time of day, I guess it would be around maybe 3 to 5 p.m. Around 3 to 5 p.m., the sunlight would come into the house in such a way that he would go over and lay on the carpet, and just the sunlight would be beaming in that area, warming it up. And he would get that sun. The window would be open, the blinds would be open. So part of it, I think, was the warmth, because pit bulls aren't like super, super furry. Part of it was the warmth, but I think the biggest part of it was the vitamin D. Watch animals. Animals seem to intuitively live in harmony with nature and even with the foods that they choose. Like if you just see an animal out in nature, they're choosing the stuff with the highest amount of nutrients. I'm watching that show Alone, which we've talked about on here before, where it's like a survival type show. I won't go deep into it, but the people out there that are catching the right foods and getting the right nutrients, they're typically the ones that stay in the better mental and physical health to be able to do it great. The ones that aren't getting sufficient macro and micronutrients through hunting, fishing, and passive ways of getting food with traps, those types of things, it doesn't matter how hardcore of a person they are. It doesn't matter how great their survival skills are. If they're not meeting the recommended macro and micronutrients to keep their brain and body working optimally, they end up giving up, or the medical team comes and pulls them out of there, because if they lose any more weight, it's going to start eating up their fucking organs. So it's real serious. And my theory, Chris, is that since we can see our skin, since we can see our muscles, since we can see our body's fat, since we can see our hair for people that have hair, since we can see all this stuff on the outside, I think a lot of humans are very hyper aware that this is what's going on. Since this, and I might have said this before, but I'll say it again because it bears repeating. Since our brains are encapsulated in this skull and skin, we can't see these things. We never get to see them. Out of sight, out of mind for most Americans, until, and many other countries too, until people really figure out just how important their brain is, figure out what makes it healthier and what makes it worse, and then make that a new kind of daily awareness of, I need to protect my brain. I need to figure out what my specific brain and genetics and blood type and all that stuff needs for me to feel good at this certain phase of my life. The people that don't ever adopt that, they keep eating crappy foods, they keep drinking, they keep taking drugs, they keep smoking. I think a big reason people will, it goes on for so many years with a lot of people, is they're not seeing what their decisions and their automatic behaviors, the impact those are having on their brain health. And so I've never seen a scan of my brain, but I'm constantly aware of like everything I put in my body. Is this good for my brain or bad for my brain? Now it's just an unconscious thing. And I do stuff that's bad for my brain, but hardly ever. And I outweigh it with positive things that are good for the brain. I just went off on a long freaking tangent.
No, that's good. Yeah, and you don't have to be perfect all the time, but compared to most people, and I was tempted for a second to say, the standard rehabby line compared to addicts and alcoholics, which I increasingly reject as a category of human being as time goes on. But you could say compared to people who are stuck in some kind of cycle in which they aren't treating themselves correctly or properly or optimally. People who are aware of brain health tend to make better decisions. Coach Tana went to the Dr. Amen clinic, I think in Atlanta, and she had her brain scanned, and she was open. I think she might have done an episode in which she talked about this a while back, but she clearly had an issue with alcohol for years since she was pretty young. But they were able to tell her just based on her brain scan, like, wow, like you must have done some optimization work. And she said, yeah, I've done supplements, I exercise, I've cleaned up my lifestyle, my belief systems are different. It's way over my head as to how, and maybe I don't know if the science is quite there yet, but how your belief systems would impact your brain scans. But I would think, at least indirectly, healthier, more optimal belief systems would result in fewer destructive behaviors that could then damage the brain. So there's one idea. But just genuinely making an effort to understand yourself as a biochemical organism with needs. I think it's sometimes tempting to fall into a determinism in which we say, all right, well, these are the inputs that went in, so therefore this is the behavior that comes out, or this is the result that comes out. We do have some proportion of our behavior that can be explained by free will, which is a good thing. If that weren't the case, then none of us would have ever changed or made a decision to do something right rather than something wrong, or to not moralize, to do something healthier rather than something unhealthy. I remember I had times in early recovery where I forced myself to drink LaCroix, even though I really wanted to go back
What's
to
LaCroix?
It's a sparkling water. So they have bubbly now, they have Waterloo, these interesting flavored waters. I think LaCroix was the first one. At least it was the first one I was aware of. But I'd had a phase right after I quit, literally when I was in detox, where I was drinking 2 liters of soda a day. And it never occurred to me that there was any biochemical reason for it. It's what I like. I like soda. Even though I never liked soda. I didn't grow up drinking soda. My mom wouldn't have bought me soda when I was a kid. I never drank soda when I was drinking a liter of alcohol a day. Ironically, because I would have said, ew, that's unhealthy, So all of a sudden I'm drinking soda. And actually I'll do a quick aside because I just thought of this. Katie Lane, who I have spoken with, you mentioned that previously. She has a great Instagram post that I stumbled across. I'm trying to do more Instagram. And there was a little skit she did with herself where someone offered her some wine and she played the role of someone who was a wine drinker and said, oh, of course, yeah, sure, I'll have the wine. And then someone offers her some apples. And she was like, are those organic? Where are they from? Do they have pesticides on them? And all of the things that she was concerned about were obviously the wine would have been a much bigger problem. But anyway, so here I was in early recovery, and I found I was able to make a choice, even though I didn't want to at first, to start drinking the sparkling water, and then it became habit. So there's some free will there. And I'm sure it was made easier by the fact that by that stage, I'd already found some L-glutamine. I was taking a multivitamin. I might have been taking omega-3s. I don't think I'd found the full range of amino acids yet that really helped me see life in full color again. But I had some tools and I had enough free will to make a change, and that became a new habit. And I bet my brain health, if I'd had a series of brain scans, probably would have reflected that over time. So yeah, the only thing we have, since we can't see our brains, we can't figure out what they look like unless you have a brain scanner in your home. We have behavior, and we have our sense of well-being. And we can look at those, and I think it's helpful to understand that there is a biochemical component precisely because it lets you get rid of the shame that occurs when you assume that you are just a bad person. Because why do I drink soda? Why do I drink too much? Why do I use opioids? Why do I have all these destructive behaviors? I must be bad. I must have character defects. And then you can go totally down the rabbit hole of trying to modulate your behavior with like talk therapy and other techniques that don't do anything to change the systems in your brain that are there that we just can't see. So, like if just because there's a curtain in the form of our cranium and the skin over our head doesn't mean that there's not real stuff going on in there. Just because it's really small and we couldn't figure out what it was, even if we opened it up, doesn't mean that there's not stuff going on. But the science is there now. We're not in the 1930s anymore. We know enough about brain chemistry to know that you can improve your brain health. And in fact, we have really, I think, hopeful and optimistic scientific facts now, such as the existence of neuroplasticity. You can change your brain. You can use that combination. You can use what little free will it feels like you have in order to do things that proactively improve your own brain wiring and your own biochemical balance, and subsequently your own behavior. And through repetition and time, ultimately you end up with a better functioning brain.
I love the Amen clinics and their service. That's very expensive, but very, very well worth it. Well worth it. I think it's probably for the brain scans they do, which are SPECT scans, SPECT, I think they are. They scan for blood flow regions. There was one client I had many years ago, probably 5 years ago now, and he was in his early 20s, and his mom hired me for like 12 weeks, I think, maybe 6 weeks at the beginning. I ended up, coaching both he and her. I had to work with her for like codependency and for like, she was so codependent with her son. So I helped her with that. And then when I first started working with them, he was on 100 milligrams of methadone, sleeping all day, depressed as shit, just no way to live, man. Sleeping 18 hours a day, just over medicated on methadone, depressed, no driver's license because of a DUI. And they lived somewhere that was like 45 minutes away from all the action of a city or something. So long story short, he transitioned from methadone to a taper to get on Suboxone, and then from Suboxone to Kratom. And that helped his brain out a lot. He was, I think he was working part-time. He had a lot of stuff going for him. All of a sudden he had a girlfriend, but he's still like, there was shit. I could tell. I was like, there has to be something with his brain. The supplements just weren't doing the same as they usually do. For someone his age, early 20s, it should have been a much faster repair. I convinced his mother to invest in taking him to the Amen clinics to where they could scan his brain. I said, I'm worried about him. I said, there's something very wrong with his brain. I can tell. I don't know what it is, but I think there's something majorly wrong because supplements and all this stuff, it seems like he's very, like, there's just not a lot of remembering things, motivation. It was bad, She took him in. It was a lot of money. And then he got scanned, whatever the closest one to probably Florida or Georgia is. And they said that his brain scan showed signs of early onset dementia type stuff. I think by this point he was 25. That's fucking scary, man. Can you believe that? Signs of early onset dementia. So of course they gave him, what they do there is a holistic protocol. They do biopsychosocial, environmental, spiritual, just like we do as well. So they always try to help people with just holistic stuff without medicines if possible, but they definitely prescribe medicines and everything. So nowadays he is, I think, running his own construction business, or he's like at the top of a construction business, living on his own or with roommates or something. Brain's working good. Just such a cool story. I don't think I would have been able to help him get there, because I couldn't figure out what the fuck was going on. He needed these specialists to check out his brain. And I wonder how many people are out there in the world that have, been to psychiatrists, doctors, therapists, tried supplement protocols, diets, and they're not getting the kind of success or lasting success that they want. Wonder how many people could just go get a SPECT scan, looking for the areas of blood flow, too much blood flow, too little blood flow. And these things in the brain, if you have way too much blood flow, Dr. Amen would say he calls that area of your brain hot. That's a hot area of your brain. And that's not good. And then with an area with much lower than usual blood flow, I forget what he calls that. Maybe he calls that a cool. It's almost like it's disabled. So yeah, it's not just about the nutrients that come into our bodies. It's even about things like the blood flow in certain areas of our brain can be off. Brains are freaking fascinating, miraculous things. They're just so wonderful and beautiful.
Yeah, well, that's good to know that in his case, that early onset dementia could be reversed or arrested.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a terrifying diagnosis to get. But when I think about my years of drinking, everything was a blur. That's one of the effects of alcohol. But you would assume that chronic heavy drinking to the level that I was doing would cause serious brain damage. I mean, alcohol is toxic to neurons. And I'm less familiar with the effects of chronic opioid consumption, but it probably wasn't a surprise to you either. That's great to hear that he's doing well. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of innovation in as far as the electrical circuitry of the brain. I read a book. I can't recall. I'm blocking out the name of the book, but there was an interesting book making the case that we focus too little on the actual electric activity in brain regions. I know brain scans do look at that, but down to like the level of the synapses, it's very important. They've shown they can now with like Elon Musk and Neuralink, they're stimulating certain regions and giving a monkey an orgasm or something. There's interesting stuff that they're doing that is totally baffling to me. But the more we understand all of the levels of this, and not just you and me, but the more everything advances, I think the less justification there's going to be for a shame-based approach to healing behavior. Addiction just being one form of behavior. And obviously it's not just a random behavior. There's some rhyme and reason to it, but we can get to the bottom of what that rhyme and reason is. And hopefully not just for the average person or the majority of people, but for people in a customized manner. We can know exactly what's going on for this person, exactly what's going on for that person. I don't see how biochemical imbalances and nutrient deficiencies wouldn't still be extremely useful to know about and to repair. Again, and I wouldn't know, it would seem to me like it would also be helpful to just have to optimize people's lives, if only to give them a better baseline from which to compare the ravages of addiction and perpetual relapse, or whatever the phase of life of active addiction looked like for them. Just basic, simple things that they can do. Going out in the sun, getting fresh air, earthing on the ground, eating meals with people that they care about, not eating all of their meals in microwave plastic bags from the grocery store. Basic stuff that I think is always going to be relevant. And there's just not a lot of emphasis. In the same way that there wasn't a lot of emphasis on the utility of vitamin D for increasing immunity, generally speaking, during the pandemic. And we had Dr. Umhau on here to talk about why vitamin D a long time ago was so crucial for immunity. And this was in the beginning phases of the pandemic. Dr. Umhau being a multiple decade-long researcher at the NIH, epidemiologist, and also an expert in alcohol addiction, one of my favorite guests ever on the podcast. And this was back before any in the mainstream media talked about it. And I remember feeling a little uncomfortable, like, are we allowed to say this? But now it's so obvious, that you need to be taking vitamin D. There are 80-year-olds out here who know that and who have been taking vitamin D. for the last year. And so that's good. It seems like there's some hope that some basic things will get out about the importance of holistic nutrition or lifestyle. But hopefully it's not just on a, once every 3 years, the average American learns about the importance of one nutrient. Hopefully we move a little bit faster than that and have a little bit more of a holistic progress.
Yeah, the mainstream news outlets. It's funny because I do actually learn a lot of stuff about new research coming out and new ideas from these mainstream websites. But a lot of the stuff is just stuff that you and I have been talking about for years and years and years. And now researchers are just now looking to study it. But this stuff is crazy. Want to hear my newest bio-optimization tactic?
Of course.
So I got in maybe a couple months ago into like either daily or every other day magnesium baths with Epsom salt or the bath flakes, magnesium sulfate or chloride, with CBD or without CBD, with botanicals or without botanicals. Now it's to the point, Chris, that almost every single day, here's what I do. It could be in the morning. It could be at night. Sometimes I do it in the afternoon. But it's almost daily at this point, and it has been twice a day some days. I'll do 5 minutes in a really warm or hot bath with some Epsom salt or Ancient Minerals bath flakes, sometimes with CBD if I have it, sometimes without. My essential oils kit in my closet, I'll put things like combinations of peppermint and lavender. Or last night I did some tea tree oil in there and lemongrass too. So 5 minutes of just sitting in there in the hot bath. Then I'll sit up, and the shower is up here, and I put it on freezing cold water. So remember, 5 minutes of soaking in this relaxing magnesium botanical bath. It feels so good. Activates my parasympathetic nervous system. Really, really dials in my breathing. It's a great way for me taking these baths per day. And it's not just a bath. I'll get to that in a second. It's a great way for me to keep my breathing really, really balanced. So I'll be breathing really deep, just naturally submerged in this warm water. I can smell the essential oils coming up, eucalyptus helping me breathe better. After about 5 minutes, I blast myself with freezing cold water sitting up. So my waist down is in the hot water. Freezing cold water, boom, 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 boom. Going from that parasympathetic spot, that's activating my sympathetic nervous system. Oh, cold, 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 but I'm still partly in the hot water. So I'll do that for about 30 seconds and I'll turn it off. Woo! And then you start to have this kind of nice mixture of that relaxing from the hot. And then that just woke you up. Then I'll like put some hot water on me, hot water. Okay. Then I'll lay all the way back down, totally submerged, except for my face, in all the hot water again. Do that for about a minute. Then I'll get back up and I'll blast myself with the cold water again. What are all the things going on here? I'm getting the magnesium therapy absorbing through my skin and very high bioavailability. So I'm saturating my body with magnesium in the way that it increases ATP, serotonin, helps to reduce blood pressure, increases nutrient absorption. I'm getting the heat therapy, parasympathetic nervous system activation, getting all the benefits of the cold therapy, beta endorphins, reducing inflammation, antidepressant, better skin. And then by fluctuating that a few times, also the negative ions from the water crashing while it's making the tub, crashing down on me. Negative ions from water breaking is one of the most powerful mood boosters on the planet, especially natural mood boosters. And so by doing that hot, cold, I start to feel like I'm nodding out like a natural version. My favorite drug combo in the past was opioids and benzos. The opioids made me energized and euphoric, and the benzos calmed that hypomania from the opioids down. I've found this scientific, natural way in a bathtub and shower now. I come out of that shit, I'm not even done. Then I put a robe on. I rinse everything off, freezing cold water. Step out, put my robe on. That's really comfortable. Go get my bird, Chris. Get my papaya And then I bring her, I roll my robe up and I put her in the shower. She sits on my finger and that showers her for maybe a minute or two. Then I put her in her birdie robe and I wrap her around it like a hot dog. And then I put her right here. And then so I'm fresh out of the bath shower with all the magnesium, Epsom, negative ions, all that. She's out of the shower and she can smell the aromatherapy on me, all the essential oils, because I smell like that. And so we're like this and we're both so relaxed. And then we feed off each other. I feel her releasing dopamine, endorphins, and oxytocin for me, and it's doing the same for her, I'm sure. So that little 20-minute routine that's once a day typically is like, has changed my life, man. I look forward to it so much. I can't imagine like poisoning my body with alcohol when I have something like that. That makes you feel so much better than drinking, dude. So much better. Now, from an alcohol dependent and addicted or wired state, probably wouldn't feel that good. But what you were talking about earlier is, neuroplasticity. That means you can rewire your brain. And we talked about it months ago. You can keep over time through these lifestyle consistencies of new habits, raise our baseline, raise our baseline, raise our baseline. I used to wear sunglasses all the time and then I'll shut up. Even when it was cloudy, I had social anxiety for a lot of my life. Wearing sunglasses, even when it was cloudy, sometimes even indoors, was a way to be less socially anxious because people weren't like looking at me. It was like this way of hiding, even though people could see me. It was really weird. But I haven't worn a pair of sunglasses, not even once, in probably like 5 or 6 years. And you know what? Ever since I stopped wearing sunglasses, that's been a huge benefit because now I never used to get sun in my eyes ever. I'd always have them on outside. It's like these simple things that we can do that can change your life. And then you do a bunch of them and you keep doing them. Oh man, you can change your life, huh? You can change your fucking life.
That was a classic Matt Finch monologue. I don't have much to add. I think we should end there. But I will say, while you were talking about wrapping up in your bathrobe and putting your bathrobe on your bird like a hot dog, you've come a long way since the drug dealer Whiskey Finch with a status symbol pit bull. So that's pretty good to see. It's funny to see how and inspiring to see how people can change over time. But I'll also add that I have been doing Epsom salt baths almost every night as well.
Nice.
I need to order some or get some from the store. I'm lazy. I don't like to carry it to my car and then carry it. I get a lot when I get it. I actually have a bucket probably 3 feet high and I pour multiple bags in there and I have a wooden scoop. And so I just scoop it in there. And I usually do 4 or 5 like pretty big scoops, which I don't know, it's probably 3 or 4 pounds of Epsom salt. It would be nice to do, 80 pounds of Epsom salt every time or whatever I think the float tank places, which unfortunately there was one in Savannah and it was awesome and it shut down. I'm sure because of the pandemic, couldn't have people going and sharing, one after the other float tanks. I think they put like 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt in there. I don't know how they afford that. Maybe that's why they shut down. But yeah, the more Epsom salt I can get in, the better. And I have a similar type of thing. Sometimes I'll burn some incense or candles. I have a bathrobe as well. And I just do a cold shower right after. But I'll stay in there. I'll read a book with my red light. You can get it on Amazon. I forget the brand. But it's a clip-on book illuminator light, reading light. And it's red light. So I'm not polluting my eyes with blue light. The light bulb above in my bathroom changes colors. I think they call it like chromatotherapy or something like that. Yeah. Just like very low level colors rather than like a white hospital light, which I hate. Mm-hmm. And so that's doing its thing. There's not enough light for me to read in the tub. So I have to have this red light clip-on thing. So I'll sometimes read in there for 40 minutes. I'll just get lost in a book. By the time I get out, I'm so relaxed. I have to, have a little bit of cold because I'm sweating. Yeah. I'm usually sweating in there. I'm getting rid of some toxins, and then the cold water hits me, a little bit of norepinephrine boost, and then I'm ready for bed. So that's been a hack for me. I've tried to make myself do that as close to post dinner as possible so that I can get to bed really early.
You're using it as
Unfortunately,
a good
I
sleep
always find
remedy.
things that push back that routine. So I think, last night I didn't even get in the bathtub until like 11:30, but that's all right. I had a friend over, played some pool. So I try to do that. If I can do that at like 7:30 or 8 p.m., then I can be in bed, uh, if not sleeping, then reading at 9, or even earlier. And that, for me, for anyone who struggles with insomnia, that's an amazing routine. I had horrible insomnia for months after I quit drinking, and Epsom salt baths were huge. A little clary sage oil is also really nice. You don't want to ingest it, any of those essential oils, but if you rub some on your hands and breathe it in through your nose. I put a little on my chest sometimes before I go to sleep. So yeah, all of these hacks can be super useful.
Yeah, and I'm so, I love the sunlight, environmental medicine. Sunlight is so important. And we've talked about how bad things can get if you don't get adequate sunlight or take a vitamin D supplement. It can get real bad. We didn't even talk about fatigue and fibromyalgia type symptoms and low back spasms and dry, flaky skin. These are all can be symptoms of vitamin D deficiency. But I'm just really enjoying exploring this new thing of water. I just love water. That's why I used to be so into surfing, and I'm still into body surfing. Water makes you feel good, whether you're taking a shower or in a bath or walking with your feet in the ocean or a stream or running through the sprinklers when you're a kid. Water makes, one of the videos that I love the most on the internet is this lady talking. What's her name? I'm going to not think of her name right now, but she's like the spirituality guru lady. And one of her viral videos when she first started was how to raise your frequency or how to raise your vibration. And I believe the number one thing on there out of maybe, 7 or 8 things you can do to raise your vibration, your energetic vibration. She said water, be around water or even like take a shower. Imagine, and then I'll shut up with this and we'll end this and we'll go on our separate ways for the day. Imagine going to a treatment facility that didn't have any counseling or any therapy or anything. But before you started any of those psychotherapeutic counseling or therapy or group sessions, before you did any of that for like 2 to 4 weeks, all you were doing, let's say this place is in Miami, Florida or something. Or no. Let's say it's in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, on a private, secluded beach. And they got a big mansion, medical facility. Imagine treatment. All it is things like sauna, freezing cold water, Epsom salt baths, uh, all sorts of healing red lights, binaural beats, deep tissue massage, acupuncture, people coming up and physically stretching you out, giving you lots and lots of the proper types of water and nutrition that's customized for you before you even start any of the psychosocial stuff, psychosocial environmental. It's just a couple of weeks straight of of detoxing and biochemical optimization. I'm surprised they don't do that, man. Give the people a chance to like detox and start getting feeling good, and then start them in the talk therapy
Well, they
stuff or the
do that,
CBT.
but they miss the biochemical repair regimen.
Yeah, they
So
detox them from the drugs
yeah,
without feeding their brain the things that are leading to these prolonged deficiencies.
right. Yeah, there are fancy places where you go get a massage and hang out on the beach and go on a safari, or I don't
Eat a
know.
ribeye, do
But
some yoga in Malibu.
yeah, but that's only part of the equation. There needs to be in-depth supplementation, and that's
Oh
typically
yeah.
what they're missing, along with other parts other aspects of the biopsychosocial spiritual hierarchy that we'll save for another episode. But yeah,
We'll
really good
save
to
for
be
now.
back with you, Matt.
Woohoo. Thanks, man.